Hey guys, how's it going? I hope you're all having a good day so far. My name is Ben, and if you can't already tell, I love Xenoblade Chronicles X. It's one of my favourite games of all time. So the recent announcement of Definitive Edition made me a very happy boy. Last time, I went through the trailer and did something of an analysis/comparison video. It was fairly scripted, there wasn't really much room for me to just talk about the game outside of what was being shown in the trailer. But I did mention that I wanted to do a hopes and wishes video talking about the things that I'd like to see in this new version of the game. And well, today, as you can tell by the video title, that's exactly what we're going to be doing. Now, I'm still trying to iron down a style for this sort of video. I'm kind of new to the produced, edited content like this. I'm more of a streamer where everything's very off the cuff. And so I'm not sure the strict following a script thing that I did last time really worked for me. So I'm going to be taking this video a little bit more off the cuff, just kind of seeing where I go with it. Obviously, I'll edit it down a bit if it gets a little bit waffly, because that does happen. But we'll just see how it goes. This is early days. Probably won't be continuing this edited video stuff beyond Xenoblade X. Maybe it'll take off. Probably not. I don't know. Anyway, you know what I just said about waffling? Let's get started. What I do want to do is to keep this video realistic. I could go on and on for hours about, I want 4-player, online, fully explore the whole world. I want an entire 120-hour story. I want 20 new Skells. But that's not going to happen. And I think getting into unrealistic wish territory will kind of dilute the point of this video. X Definitive Edition is obviously going to have some changes, but aside from whatever new content we will be getting, most of it is going to be tweaks, quality of life updates, and small little revisions and changes. But there are a lot of those that I would like to see, and I'm going to be talking about them today. I will be getting into what I want to see from the new content, but I'm going to be keeping that spoiler-free as possible and leaving that towards the end of the video for people who, might want to even avoid speculation for fear of spoilers. One of the things that X desperately needs is a UI overhaul. I like the general style and look of it, but it has a lot of issues when it comes to usability and readability. And there are quite a few things that I think need to be changed to make it more accessible for a new audience. And to be honest, I think this is one of the more likely changes. Xenoblade 1's Definitive Edition had a very major UI redo, and I think Monolith will take the lessons they've learnt from the games after X and apply them to X. The biggest issue with X's UI is the text size. I'm sure anyone who has never played X but is part of the Xenoblade community has probably heard the bitching about it, and they probably think, it can't be that bad, people must be overblowing it. But no, it really is a problem. If you have a big TV or a very high-resolution screen, it's not the end of the world, but if you were ever playing it on the gamepad, the small text could become very hard to read. And on the Switch, a system where, 50% of the time people are probably going to be playing it in handheld, where the Xenoblade games have adaptive resolution that could potentially get quite low, small text is going to be a big problem. And with a game like this that delivers a lot of information to you, both in terms of the gameplay systems and story and lore and dialogue, well, small text, it's just a bad thing. It needs to be made bigger. One of my least favourite aspects with Xenoblade X is how it expects you to manage your party. It doesn't have a nice menu where you can just swap in and out who you would like to have. No, that would be too easy. Instead, everyone hangs out in a specific spot around NLA. You have to remember where they are, walk up to them, and talk to them. I sort of get what they're going for here. They want it to feel like the world is real and that the other party members have a place in the world, they've got their own lives, and they're doing their own thing. From a world-building point of view, I like that you can find them around the world, but when you're trying to balance Affinity and constantly swapping your party around, it really is just a pain in the ass to deal with. On top of that, the poor excuse for a party menu that we do get has this little reserved party member column, And that's not what it does. It's not a reserved party member column. Putting people in there just removes them from your party. It's really weirdly designed. And there's a really easy way to get around this if they want the party menu to make sense in universe. Everyone has a communicator. Just explain it that way. You do a character's affinity mission, you meet them, you get their number, you just call them up. It's very simple. There's no reason why that should be a problem. And in fact, this is pretty much what Xenoblade 3 does. For the hero menu, you can just simply add any hero that you've unlocked to your party, and if they're not currently in your party, you can go to their colony and just find them chilling in the world. X can do that, no problem. This is one of my biggest pet peeves with the game, and if they don't change this, I don't know what I'm going to do, but it won't be pretty. Yet another issue with party management in Xenoblade X is gear management. If you have a bit of gear on a party member who is not in your party, there's no way to get it off them without putting them back in your party, going into their menu, and replacing it with something else or removing it. This just gets tedious and annoying if you're constantly swapping around your party members. Xenoblade 3 had the perfect solution to this. Even if a hero is not in your party, you can still see the gear that is attached to them and take it off them and put it on somewhere else. Just add this to X. It would make managing the party a lot easier. Creating builds in Xenoblade X is a lot of work. There are a lot of different components that you have to consider. Your ground gear, your augments, your arts, and your skills. And it can be a little intimidating to move from the build you're comfortable with to something new, because you might forget how to put that old build back together if the new build doesn't work out for you. Xenoblade 3 provides the perfect solution. You're able to save and load party loadouts. With how complex Xenoblade X can be, how many different bits of gear there are, how many different classes, arts, and skills there are, I think having this ability would be really, really useful. One of the biggest issues with party management in Xenoblade X is that characters not currently in your party don't get experience. What makes this more of a problem is that Elmer and Lynn need to be in your party for story missions and about half of the Affinity missions, meaning they're in your party for about half the game, and the other half of the time, you're constantly switching everyone around in order to balance out the Affinity gain. What this means is, in the back half of the game, most of the party members are about 20 to 30 levels below you, and just become dead weight. Just make them gain experience while they're not in your party. They're off doing their own missions anyway, so it's not like it wouldn't make sense. Another potential solution to this issue is to add the bonus experience system from Xenoblade 2. Since you're doing a lot of experience and questing in X anyway, you'd quite easily rack up a bunch of bonus experience, and then every time you swap your party around, you could just spend it on them and bring them up to level with the rest of your party. Fashion gear is one of my favourite systems that Xenoblade X added to the series. It allows you to dress up your character without affecting their stats, and hiding the horrific abominations of outfits that good builds usually lead to. And to be honest, for ages I never really had an issue with how X implemented it. But then Xenoblade Definitive Edition came along and showed me a better way of doing it. How it works in X is that fashion gear actually uses the pieces of armor that are currently in your inventory. You equip it as fashion gear, unless you have another one of them, you can't equip it anywhere else. In Definitive Edition, simply having a piece of gear in your inventory unlocks the look of that gear for the fashion system. You can equip that gear, sell it, delete it, do whatever you want with it, but that design is permanently unlocked for you to use as much as you like. Fashion gear isn't a system that affects the gameplay, so I don't really see any downside or balancing issues with switching to how Definitive Edition does it. It's just a better system, and I think X would benefit from it. There are so many cool and unique outfits that you only get one of, and it would be nice to just stick my entire party in them. This next wish is sort of an extension of my fashion gear change one. Basically, a lot of the headwear in X are full face helmets, which can be a bit of a problem for cutscenes because you can no longer see the character's face emoting under them. X has a fix for this. It has this little toggle that will allow you to turn headgear off. but it's all or nothing. I'd be fine with it, except for the existence of HB. HB wears glasses. His glasses aren't part of his character model, they're a bit of gear. And if you click the headwear toggle, his glasses disappear, and he just looks wrong without them. I know this is like a really minor pet peeve and a nitpick, but it is something that bugs me, and I think there are a number of ways that they could get around this. They could do what Xenoblade Definitive Edition does and have none be one of your fashion gear options, so you can just have nothing appear in the head slot if you don't want anything there. Or you can update the toggle so that it's more situational, or that it's on a character-by-character basis. You know, you could have, say, Elma doesn't have headgear, but HB does, or you could have it so headgear appears in battles, but not in cutscenes. There's a number of ways they could go about updating it, and I don't really know what the best solution is, but Monolith is smart, and they're usually pretty good at picking up on feedback and stuff, so hopefully enough people have complained about this so that I can see it fixed. Probably not, though, because it is a very much a me nitpicky issue. Time changing is another one of those systems where X decided that it needed to be immersive and realistic more than anything else. You can only change the time at specific benches or base camps or your bedroom in the barracks. Again, I get they're going for the immersion, but just immersion's good and all, but it shouldn't come at the cost of convenience to the player. The other games allow you to change the time from the menu. Please, just let us do it from anywhere, especially since so many things in X are reliant on certain times of the day. I dread to think how much of my life I've wasted fast traveling to somewhere I can change the time, and then quickly fast traveling back to where I need to be. It's a bit of a ball ache. One of the big changes that we know will be made to X is that how the map is handled is going to have to be changed. Currently, the map and all of the Frontier Nav stuff is locked to the gamepad, and obviously the Switch doesn't have a gamepad, so that's going to have to be moved into its own menu or something. But while they're doing that, I would like them to rethink X's map UI. Currently, you have two options. You have the minimap in the top right corner of the screen, which you can zoom in, and then you have the full map on the gamepad. But neither of them really do fully what you need them to do. The minimap is not the most readable thing, and zooming in doesn't help matters because you're just zooming in inside the small frame that it already occupies. And while you can use the gamepad for the full map, it's just a PNG of the continent, so it's not great for more detailed navigation. Something the other games do quite well is having a very detailed map menu. Not you, Xenoblade 2, sorry. And they also allow you to full screen the minimap. I think X needs this. X is a much more exploration-heavy game than the others, and for it to really shine in that area, it needs a decent map. If there's one complaint that I constantly see about the Xenoblade series, it's about specific tracks interrupting other bits of music. Whether it's the Vision theme in Xenoblade 1, the Chain Attack theme in Xenoblade 3, or the current offender here, the Flight theme in Xenoblade X. To be clear, I love the music that plays while you're flying. It's an absolutely wonderful track by Sawano, but how it's implemented in the game really does need a bit of work. Basically, the moment you press the flight button, the area music cuts out and the flight music begins. As soon as you land, the flight music ends and the area music starts from the beginning again. So if you're just trying to jump up a few ledges, you constantly hear the music stopping and starting over and over and over, and it just doesn't sound all that great. I'm going to play a clip so you guys kind of hear what I'm talking about. There are a couple of ways I think they could improve this. They could either allow the Skell to keep a jump button after you unlock flight, so you can just jump without needing to fly all the time, or make it so that the Skell flight music only starts when you reach a certain altitude. I think either of those options would be a better way to handle it than it is currently handled. Collectible quests are by far the most annoying type of side quest in Xenoblade X, and probably the only type of quest in the game that I don't enjoy. The main reason for this is that there is no tracking for them. The game makes no effort to tell you where the collectible you want to find is, besides telling you which continent it's in. The game does have a Collectopedia, which you would think would help, but it's useless. The Collectopedia groups all of the collectibles by continent, which is quite misleading because it makes you believe that you can find a collectible anywhere on the continent that it's from. That is not the case. Each continent is broken up into a number of spawning zones, and each one of those zones has its own list of collectibles that it can spawn. The game makes no effort to tell you that the zone exists, and it makes no effort to tell you what can be found in each zone. Both of these things need to be fixed. Xenoblade Definitive Edition proved that collectible tracking is possible, so please add it to X, and also just improve the Collectopedia. So even if I'm not doing a quest, if I want to find a certain collectible for, say, an augment or something, I should be able to just look it up in the Collectopedia and see where I can find it. One of my favourite parts of X is the enemy index, as it's just a really useful and cool resource. It's a list of all the enemies in the game, shows you what they drop, and even has a lot of lore about each type of enemy. However, while I like it a lot, it's not perfect, and it can be improved. Currently, it has the same issue as the Collectopedia. It doesn't tell you where you can actually find specific enemies, it just tells you which continent they're on. And well, the continents in X are pretty big, that really doesn't narrow it down at all. On top of this, Xenoblade X has a system where you can target specific parts of a monster, and certain drops will only be given to you if you break a specific part. But the enemy index doesn't give you this information, and that also needs to be added. One of my biggest pet peeves with Xenoblade X is the offline text. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just look in the top left corner of all of the footage from X that I've used for this video. You'll see there's this little tiny bit of text that says offline. This text is there to tell you that you're offline because, you might forget otherwise. Why is this there? What is the point of it? It's there during gameplay, it's there during cutscenes, and it's the one bit of the UI that you cannot turn off. Which means now that the game's offline has been killed, it's there in every single screenshot. You can't get rid of it. Why is it a thing? Who asked for it? Who wants to know that? Just get rid of it. It's a very minor thing. And, I don't know that it's that important that this gets fixed compared to some of the other issues that I have with the game. But my god, it is the thing that pisses me off the most. Something about it just makes me unreasonably worked up. X has amazing scenery that I want to take screenshots of, and those screenshots look better with all of the UI taken away, so they're not getting in the way. But I can't take that fucking text off. It's just there, taunting me. Monolith, please, get rid of it. Something I found out recently is that in one of the UK story trailers, it's also there in the trailer, in every single shot. Why, Monolith? Come on. Oh, that fucking text drives me wild. To be really blunt with you guys for a moment here, the sound mixing in X is fucking awful. X has a great soundtrack. It also has great voice acting. But unfortunately, I can't hear that voice acting over the soundtrack half the time because it's simply too loud. This needs to be improved. It really harms the presentation of the game and just makes it look unprofessional. I'm of the opinion that the default sound mixing of the game should be a fairly nice balance. You should be able to hear the music, the sound effects, and the voice acting. But getting the default right is not the only thing they need to do here. They also need to add volume mixing controls. It's just an industry standard at this point. It's a series standard after X. And to be honest, this is one of the things that I'm most sure they're going to add. So please, get them in there. But I think it's also important that the default volumes are fixed, because a lot of people aren't going to mess with those controls. And so then stumbling into a cutscene and not hearing what people are saying because it's being drowned out will still look quite bad. The event theatre has been a series staple since Xenoblade 2. Definitive Edition had it added, and I think it's a pretty safe bet that it's going to be added to X. But even though it's a safe bet, doesn't mean that I don't want to see it. I think X has some really great cutscenes, and I'd like to be able to watch them whenever I feel like it. Affinity missions are the high point of X's side content. They are fully voiced side quests that are on par with most of the story chapters. However, they have a little bit of an issue. Affinity missions usually have a set of required party members that you have to take into the mission with you, and for a lot of them, it's Elmer and Lynn. I understand why they do this, as for the story of the quest, they want you to have specific party members in your party so that it makes sense that they're there engaging in the cutscenes. But this leads to a number of problems. The first problem is that it just prevents you from having the party members you actually want to use in your party because you've got to make room for the required ones. The other problem is, because of this system, you can't take those party members out of your party while the quest is active, and so it blocks you from taking multiple Affinity missions or story missions at the same time. You know that reserve party menu that I was talking about being useless? Can we not make use of this? Can we not just put the required characters in there if we don't want to use them? And if we don't have them in our party, don't just block us from doing other quests until we finish this one. Just make it so that the quest cutscenes don't kick off until they're back in the party. It's what the other games do. It's quite simple. Now, personally, this isn't an issue that bothers me all that much. I can work around it. I can live with it. But it's one of the complaints with the game that I see the most, and I get why. There's one early game Affinity mission in particular that requires you to find a rare item, and if you have a tough time finding it, you can get locked into it for quite a while. When I streamed it, I had to do an extra stream specifically just to get this item, and it took me about 2 hours. In the early game, that's just unreasonable. That's the kind of thing that can turn people off a game, and I'd hate for that to happen to new people coming into X for the first time. So please, Monolith, please fix this. This next wish is another weirdly specific pet peeve, but don't worry, I'm not going to be getting quite as heated as I did with the offline text. The Japanese version of X received some DLC support missions that allowed you to cut down on your grind. They would give you more experience, more affinity, more BP, stuff like that. These were included for free in the Western version of X, and presumably they're also going to be there for free in Definitive Edition. However, how they were implemented in the Western version bugs me. Each category of these support missions has a number of different leveled missions for different points in the game. You have, say, a level 21, a level 31, a level 61. But in the Western version, they all unlock after you beat the game. Which, for the level 60 ones, the most effective ones, that's fine, they should be an endgame thing. But the others were clearly designed to be useful throughout the game, and so when you finally unlock them at the end, they're just useless. There's no reason for them to exist. I think it would be better if each stage of them unlocked at specific intervals throughout the game, rather than just all or nothing at the end of the game. X is one of my favourite games ever, so I like to replay it a fair bit. You know, make different choices in a side quest, play with a different class. And if I want to do that on the Wii U, I have to make a whole new profile unless I want to delete my data. It's not a massive issue on the Wii U, but on the Switch, online is paid. And as far as I'm aware, you can't have your online subscription apply to multiple profiles on your Switch. The online's a big part of the game, and it really does help cut down some of that endgame grind, And so I would hate to be having fun on a new file, experimenting with a new build, and then not be able to take that online. Just give us multiple save files, please, Monolith. There's really no reason not to do it. To be honest, it should be an industry standard, and it frustrates me how many games still only give you one save file. This isn't a wish that will affect me. I've been playing X for 10 years, and I'd like to think that I'm pretty well versed in how it works, and when I'm not sure about something, I love the game so much that I'm not really going to worry about it, I'm just going to Google it. That's not the case for new players, though. X is an incredibly complicated game, and it tells you nothing. Technically, it does have the online manual that does go into a fair amount of depth, but most people didn't read that, and the Switch doesn't have that feature anyway. I know for a fact that people have been turned off this game because they were so confused by what was going on, the game made no effort to explain it, so they quit out of frustration. I don't want that to happen. Definitive Edition is X's second chance to shine, and we really need to show to the new players how great this game is. And that's going to be difficult to do if they're getting frustrated because they don't know how anything works. Please add some better tutorials, Monolith. If there's one thing Monolith have always been really good at, it's responding to criticism. And clearly they know that the tutorials have been a problem because they responded to it in Xenoblade 3. Perhaps a little bit overzealously, but with how complicated these games are, being overzealous on teaching you how to play it is probably not the worst thing. That being said though, it would be nice if they had a toggle so us returning players don't have to sit through them all, but they absolutely should be on by default for all of those new players. I want them to have the best experience they can have with X, and good tutorials is the first step towards giving them that experience. That's about it in terms of improvements and changes that I'd like to see, so it's finally time to start talking about new additions that I'd like to see. The first and simplest thing that I hope for is just some more fashion gear. Making my characters look stylish it's just fun. And Xenoblade 1's Definitive Edition added plenty of new outfits, so I'd like X to see the same. I think this is a pretty realistic ask when it comes to new content. As long as we don't get any more bloody tank tops. This game has a weird tank top obsession. I just don't get it. Skells are one of the best things about Xenoblade X, and I want more, even though I know I shouldn't. We already have quite a few different Skell frames in the game, but it would be nice to see some more added. Now, I'm not expecting them to be completely new frames with new stats, because that could be a bit of a balancing nightmare, but just some cool new reskins or something would be nice. I love customizing Skells, and having even more options for the looks would be amazing. It could also be a good opportunity to add some amiibo functionality to the game. Maybe if you scan an amiibo, you could get a throwback Skell like Metal Face or Siren or something like that. Since Xenoblade 2, Challenge Mode has become something of a staple for the series. But what some people might not know is X kind of has a proto version of it already in the form of time attack missions. These missions allow you to fight bosses from throughout the story and rank you based on how quickly you're able to take them down. This is a start, but it would be nice to see a slightly more in-depth one. I'm not expecting something along the lines of Xenoblade 3's, and definitely not something along the lines of Xenoblade 2's, because that would be way too much new content. But something with a similar scale to Xenoblade 1's Definitive Edition's challenge mode could be quite nice. It would be a nice way to get reward tickets without needing to play online. While I assume most of the substantial new content will be going to the new story, it would be nice to see the online get a bit of a revamp as well, because I do feel that it's needed. There are 4 major components to the game's online, and 3 of these I think are fine. The squad tasks are the asynchronous tasks that 32 people team up to complete. Those are fine. Scouting other people's avatars, that works fine. The global nemesis, which are the raid boss style things, are fine. It would be nice to see a few more of them, but if we just stick with the 2 we've got, I would be fine with that. However, the way the squad missions are implemented is absolutely stupid. The squad missions are the proper multiplayer missions where up to 4 players can team up and take down various monsters from throughout the game. But in order to access them, you need to complete squad tasks. Each task corresponds to a specific mission, and that mission can only be done once per squad task cycle. And I don't mean each player can do it once, I mean each squad can do it once. So you could put a lot of work in to completing a task, and then some other player can come along and do the mission instead of you, stealing it from you, forcing you to wait until that task comes around again. It's just a stupid system. If I want to play a multiplayer game with my friend, I should be able to just link up with my friend and play whatever mission we want to do. Plus, it would be nice to get some more missions as well, add a bit more variety in there. Clearly, Nintendo are really trying to push the online for this game because in America it is coming with 3 months of Switch Online. So please make the online system just a little bit more robust, a little bit easier to use, and just less nonsensical. Right, now it's finally time to talk about the new story content. I'm not going to be getting into the actual contents of the story in this video. Currently, we only have the one trailer. We only have about 3 seconds at the end of it that hints at what the new story is going to be about. That's really not enough to go off. And, you know, I could start rambling about all the unanswered questions that X has, but we would be here for hours. The video wouldn't be focused. It would be very spoiler heavy. And I want to keep this kind of a spoiler-free thing. What I am going to be talking about, though, is the gameplay that I would like to see. The first question is, how is this new story going to be implemented? Is it going to be its own separate thing like Future Connected or the DLCs? Or is it going to be an expansion onto the end of the base game? Personally, I would prefer the separate story. That way, I would be able to jump into the new stuff, get that done right away and reduce my chance of being spoilt on it, and then I'd be able to play through the base game at my own pace. Because I love X, and I don't want to rush through it. If the new stuff is at the end of the game and I have to beat the story first, then I'm just going to end up rushing through the story and ruining the return of one of my favourite games just to see what's new. And I could live with that, but I would rather they didn't. Now, going off the precedent that Monolith has set, it's going to be a separate thing, but the situation isn't quite the same with X. With the other games, there isn't a post-game, not really. Once you beat the final boss, you get booted back to the main menu, you come back in, and you're plonked right before the point of no return. That's not the case in X. X has an actual post-game state. You beat the final mission, and then you go in after the final mission. There are actual post-game missions that exist, which is why I think that it is possible that the new story could be added on to the end of the existing story, even if I personally don't want to see it that way. However, there are benefits to them doing it that way, mainly when it comes to the side content. X has a lot of really great side quest chains. If they add 3 or 4 new chapters to the end of the story, they're probably going to add a bunch of new side quests to go with that, and they could expand and build upon all of the existing side quest chains in the game. What I would really like to see from the new content is a new area. X is all about exploration, and while I wouldn't mind the story being in existing areas, it would be a shame to just blast through that new content without having somewhere new to explore. However, new areas are expensive to make. Future Connected only got one because there was already an unfinished one in the beta content that they could pull out and revamp. I don't know that anything like that for X exists, so hoping for a new area might be a bit of a stretch. But you know what? I'm going to leave this in. I'm going to stick to it. I want to see a new continent. It doesn't have to be anywhere near as big as the existing ones in the game because they are massive. It can be a lot smaller, just as long as it has tons of secrets to find and interesting places to see. Xenoblade X has a lot of tongue-in-cheek references and Easter eggs to Xenoblade 1. They don't mean anything in terms of actually connecting to the trilogy, they're just fun nods. Stuff like the Sword of Legendariness, Lynn's Monado hairpins, Hatsu mentioning Frontier Village. I'd like to see more of this in the new story, but referencing Xenoblade 2 and 3. Perhaps you could have another hairpin you could unlock for Lyn that's Pyrus Sword, or you can find a second Sword of Legendariness that's Lucky 7. Just fun little stuff like that. The Xenoblade fan base has grown a lot thanks to Xenoblade 2 and 3, and I think those fans would really appreciate those fun little nods. And there we go. That is basically everything that I could think of that I would like to see changed or added to Xenoblade X in Definitive Edition. I'm sure I'll probably come up with some more ideas between now and release, but I think this is a fairly comprehensive list. I just want to say thank you to everyone who has watched the videos I've made about X. I'm not really a content creator first and foremost. I'm a streamer. I prefer that format just because it's a little bit more off the cuff and relaxed. And I've really reached outside of my comfort zone doing this, but I really wanted to do it because I love X, and I wanted a little space like this where I could just really talk about it. And seeing how well my first video did, honestly, made me really happy. I got a lot more views on that than I ever thought I'd get. Got a lot of really positive comments, and that meant the world to me. I don't know if I'll be doing any more videos on X, just because they are a lot of work, and currently, I don't really have any ideas of what I would want to talk about. If we get another trailer, maybe I could do another analysis. There's plenty of story stuff I could talk about, but at the moment, as I've said, we don't really have much to go on in terms of where Definitive Edition's new story is going to go. We have one hint, and it is a fairly strong hint, but until we get a second trailer, we can't really narrow down what the story is actually going to be about. And even then, even if we get that, I'd probably be better leaving it to someone like Luxin, who is a lot more experienced at this sort of thing. Well, all that said, guys, thanks for watching, and have a good one. I'll see you when I see you. And when I see you will probably be in March on Mira, because you'll all be playing Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, won't you? If you won't be, I have one question for you. What's wrong with you?